Have you ever experienced something so terrifying that it stayed with you forever? In today's video, I'll be sharing a chilling true story about a visit to a seemingly normal restaurant that turned into a night of horror. Imagine sitting down for a meal, only to be confronted by shadowy figures and an eerie sense of being watched. What would you do if you discovered the place was haunted by a dark past? Join me as I unravel the haunting events that took place and the shocking history behind the restaurant. We'll explore the lingering spirits of a tragic family murder and the unanswered questions that continue to haunt me. This story isn't just about a ghostly encounter, it's about the terrifying realization that some places are forever marked by their past. If you love real-life horror stories and spine-chilling mysteries, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss another eerie tale. Let's dive into this haunting experience together. I decided to treat myself to a night out at a fancy Mexican restaurant that had recently opened in town. It was one of those places that everyone was talking about, and I had been looking forward to experiencing it for myself. As I walked through the door, I was immediately struck by the ambience. The lighting was dim, casting a warm, inviting glow over the elegant decor. The tables were set with crisp white linens, and the soft hum of conversation filled the air. The restaurant was bustling with activity. Waiters moved gracefully between the tables, balancing trays of colorful dishes and exotic drinks. The scent of freshly made tortillas and sizzling fajitas wafted through the air, making my mouth water. I was shown to a cozy table by the window, where I could watch the lively scene both inside and outside the restaurant. As I settled into my seat, I felt a sense of excitement and anticipation. I had heard so many good things about this place, and I was eager to see if it lived up to the hype. The menu was extensive, filled with a variety of traditional Mexican dishes and creative twists on classic favorites. I took my time reading through it, savoring the descriptions and imagining the flavors. When the waiter arrived to take my order, I was ready. I chose a dish that sounded particularly delicious and ordered a specialty drink to go with it. As I waited for my food to arrive, I looked around the restaurant, taking in the details. The walls were adorned with vibrant artwork, and soft, Latin music played in the background, adding to the festive atmosphere. My drink arrived first, a colorful concoction garnished with a slice of lime and a sprig of mint. I took a small sip, enjoying the refreshing taste. As I sat there, relaxing and enjoying the ambience, I couldn't help but feel a sense of contentment. This was exactly the kind of evening I had been hoping for, a chance to unwind and indulge in some good food and drink. The restaurant continued to buzz with activity. Groups of friends chatted and laughed at nearby tables, while couples leaned in close, sharing intimate conversations. It was a lively yet comfortable atmosphere, and I felt perfectly at ease. I took another sip of my drink, feeling the stress of the day melt away. As I waited for my meal, I let my mind wander, enjoying the sensory experience. The combination of the delicious smells, the soft music, and the warm, inviting decor created a perfect setting for a relaxing evening. I felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that I had chosen the right place to spend my night. When my meal finally arrived, it was a feast for the senses. The plate was a work of art, with vibrant colors and enticing aromas. I picked up my fork and took my first bite, savoring the explosion of flavors. It was everything I had hoped for and more. Each bite was a delight, and I found myself getting lost in the enjoyment of the meal. As I continued to eat, I noticed a black human-sized mass pass by my table out of the corner of my eye. It was quick and without features, almost like a shadow. Startled, I looked around but saw nothing unusual. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just a trick of the light or my imagination playing tricks on me. I took another sip of my drink and tried to focus on my meal. But the strange sight lingered in my mind, making me feel slightly uneasy. I glanced around the restaurant again, but everything seemed normal. I took a deep breath and decided to ignore it, focusing instead on the delicious food in front of me. Despite the odd experience, I continued to enjoy my evening. The food was fantastic, and the ambience was just as wonderful as I had hoped. I finished my meal feeling satisfied and content, but the memory of that strange shadowy figure stayed with me, lingering in the back of my mind. Little did I know, that eerie encounter was just the beginning of a much more unsettling experience. My drink arrived with a flourish, the waiter setting it down in front of me with a polite nod. It was a colorful cocktail, garnished with a slice of lime and a sprig of mint. I admired it for a moment before taking a small sip. The refreshing taste was a perfect start to my meal, and I felt a sense of calm wash over me. As I set the glass back on the table, something strange happened. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a black human-sized mass pass by my table. It was quick, almost like a shadow, and it had no discernible features. Startled, I turned my head to get a better look, but there was nothing there. For a moment, I just sat there, feeling a mix of confusion and curiosity. I glanced around the restaurant, but everything seemed normal. The waiters were still bustling about, the other patrons were engrossed in their conversations, and nothing seemed out of place. I shook my head, trying to brush it off as a trick of the light or maybe just my imagination. I took another sip of my drink, trying to focus on the flavors and the ambience of the restaurant. But my mind kept drifting back to what I had seen. It was so vivid, so real, that I couldn't completely dismiss it. I glanced around again, scanning the room for anything unusual, but there was nothing. As I waited for my meal, I tried to rationalize what I had seen. Maybe it was just a shadow cast by someone walking by, or perhaps a reflection from one of the lights. I considered all the possibilities, but none of them seemed to fully explain the dark human-shaped mass that had passed so close to my table. Minutes later, as I was halfway through my drink, I saw it again. The same black mass, moving quickly and silently past my table. This time, it was even clearer, and my heart skipped a beat. I looked around frantically, trying to see if anyone else had noticed, but everyone else seemed completely oblivious. A sense of unease settled over me. This was no mere trick of the light or figment of my imagination. Something was definitely not right. I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself, focusing on the sounds of the restaurant and the taste of my drink. But the image of the dark figure lingered in my mind, refusing to be ignored. I glanced around once more, hoping to catch another glimpse of the figure and perhaps find some logical explanation. But the restaurant remained unchanged, filled with the same lively chatter and soft music. I felt a growing sense of dread, wondering what could be causing these strange sightings. Determined not to let it ruin my evening, I tried to distract myself by looking at the menu again and thinking about what to order for dessert. But my thoughts kept drifting back to the shadowy figure. It was hard to shake the feeling that something was off, and I couldn't fully relax. When my meal arrived, I hoped the food would be enough to take my mind off the unsettling occurrences. The vibrant colors and enticing aromas did help to some extent, and I found myself enjoying each bite. But the memory of the dark mass kept creeping back, a persistent reminder of the unexplained events. As I finished my meal, I couldn't help but glance around the restaurant one last time. The figure was nowhere to be seen, but the uneasy feeling remained. I paid my bill and left, the night air cool against my skin as I stepped outside. As I walked home, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. The black mass, the eerie sense of being watched, and the strange atmosphere of the restaurant all combined to create a lingering sense of dread. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a much deeper and more disturbing mystery. I tried to dismiss the first sighting as just a figment of my imagination or a trick of the light. Maybe I was just tired, or perhaps it was a shadow cast by one of the waiters moving around the restaurant. I convinced myself that it was nothing to worry about and focused on enjoying my meal. I took another sip of my drink and looked around the restaurant. The lively atmosphere seemed unchanged. The waiters were busy attending to customers, and the other diners appeared to be having a great time. The soft Latin music continued to play in the background, adding to the festive mood. As I took a bite of my food, I tried to push the unsettling image out of my mind. The flavors were rich and delicious, and I found some comfort in the familiar act of eating. But even as I tried to relax, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then, it happened again. This time, the black human-sized mass appeared more distinct and unsettling. It moved smoothly past my table, almost gliding, and I could feel a chill run down my spine. I turned quickly to look, but once again, there was nothing there. My heart began to race, and I felt a growing sense of unease. This wasn't just a trick of the light. I was sure of it now. I scanned the room, hoping to see some clue or explanation, but everything seemed perfectly normal. The other patrons continued their conversations, oblivious to the dark figure that had just passed by. I tried to calm myself, taking deep breaths and telling myself that there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe it was just a shadow, or perhaps I was seeing things. But deep down, I knew that something was wrong. The figure had been too clear, too real to be a mere illusion. As I continued my meal, I found it increasingly difficult to focus on the food. The flavors that had initially been so enjoyable now tasted dull and lifeless. My mind kept drifting back to the shadowy figure, and I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched. I glanced around the restaurant again, my eyes darting from one corner to another. The dim lighting and elegant decor now seemed menacing, casting long dark shadows that played tricks on my mind. Every movement in the periphery of my vision made me jump. By the time I finished my meal, my unease had turned into full-blown suspicion. Something was definitely wrong with this place. I couldn't explain it, but I felt an overwhelming urge to leave. I signaled for the check, my hands trembling slightly as I handed over my payment. As I walked out of the restaurant, the cool night air hit me like a splash of cold water. I took a deep breath, trying to clear my mind and shake off the lingering fear. But even as I walked away, the image of the dark figure stayed with me, a haunting reminder of the strange events inside. For the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. I tried to rationalize it, telling myself that it was just a strange coincidence or a trick of my mind. But the more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that something was truly wrong. I decided to do some research on the restaurant, hoping to find some explanation for the eerie occurrences. What I discovered would only deepen the mystery and confirm my worst fears. The restaurant had a dark history, one that explained the unsettling presence I had encountered. As I dug deeper, I found out that the building had once been a house where a horrific crime had taken place. Years ago, a man had murdered his entire family there. The tragedy had left a dark stain on the place, one that seemed to linger even after it was converted into a restaurant. The more I learned, the more the pieces began to fit together. The shadowy figure, the unsettling atmosphere, the sense of being watched, it all made sense now. The spirits of the victims were still there, unable to find peace, haunting the place where they had met their untimely end. With this new knowledge, I realized that my experience was more than just a series of strange sightings. It was a glimpse into a dark and tragic past, one that continued to affect the present. The unease I felt was a reminder that some places are forever marked by the events that took place there. Feeling increasingly uncomfortable, I decided to finish my meal as quickly as possible. Each bite felt like a struggle, the delicious flavors I had initially enjoyed now tasteless and unappealing. My mind was too preoccupied with the dark figure I had seen to appreciate the food anymore. I glanced around the restaurant, hoping to see something that would explain the eerie occurrences, but everything appeared normal. People continued to chat and laugh, oblivious to the unsettling presence that haunted me. As I ate, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It felt as though eyes were on me, observing my every move. Every now and then, I thought I saw something move in the shadows, but whenever I looked directly, there was nothing there. The unease grew stronger with each passing moment. I took another sip of my drink, hoping it would calm my nerves, but it did little to help. The dim lighting, once charming and atmospheric, now seemed oppressive and sinister. The soft music that played in the background sounded distant and hollow, adding to the sense of dread that enveloped me. Determined to leave, I signaled for the check. My hands trembled slightly as I paid the bill, trying to appear composed. The waiter seemed friendly and unaware of anything unusual, which only heightened my sense of isolation. I felt as though I was the only one who could sense the darkness lurking in the restaurant. As I stood up to leave, I felt a sudden chill run down my spine. It was as if a cold breeze had swept through the room, even though all the windows were closed. I glanced back one last time, hoping to catch a glimpse of the figure that had so unnerved me, but there was nothing. I stepped outside into the cool night air, taking a deep breath to steady myself. The street was quiet, and the normalcy of the outside world was a stark contrast to the unsettling experience I had just endured. I began to walk home, but the image of the dark figure and the feeling of being watched lingered in my mind. The further I walked from the restaurant, the more I tried to rationalize what had happened. Maybe it was just my imagination, or perhaps there was a logical explanation I hadn't considered. But deep down, I knew that what I had seen and felt was real. That night, as I lay in bed, the memories of the evening replayed in my mind. The unease, the shadows, the feeling of being watched, it all came rushing back. I couldn't sleep, my mind racing with thoughts of what had transpired. The darkness of my room seemed to amplify my fear, and every little noise made me jump. In the days that followed, I found it hard to focus on anything else. The experience had shaken me deeply, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I avoided the area around the restaurant, not wanting to be reminded of the unsettling events. The thought of going back filled me with dread. I began to research the history of the building, hoping to find some explanation for what I had encountered. What I discovered was chilling. The restaurant had been built on the site of a house where years ago, a man had brutally murdered his entire family. The house had stood empty for a long time before being torn down to make way for the restaurant. The more I learned, the more it all made sense. The dark figure, the feeling of being watched, it was all connected to the tragic events that had taken place there. The spirits of the victims were still present, unable to find peace. The realization that the restaurant was haunted by the spirits of the murdered family left me with a deep sense of unease. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been in the presence of something truly malevolent. The experience had left a mark on me, one that I knew would not fade easily. Even now, I think back to that night and feel a shiver run down my spine. The memory of the dark figure and the haunted realization stays with me, a constant reminder of the things that lurk just beyond our understanding. I have no intention of ever returning to that restaurant, the fear and unease too strong to overcome. My curiosity got the better of me. I couldn't let go of the strange experience at the restaurant, so I decided to dig into its history. Maybe there was a logical explanation, something that could make sense of the unsettling events I had witnessed. With a mix of anxiety and determination, I began my search. I started by looking up the address of the restaurant online. At first, I found the usual information: reviews, menus, pictures of happy diners. But nothing explained the eerie presence I had felt. Then, I decided to delve deeper into the history of the building itself. What I discovered was both shocking and terrifying. Years ago, the location had been the site of a horrific family murder. A man had brutally killed his wife and children in their home, the very same building where the restaurant now stood. The crime had shaken the community, leaving a dark stain on the property. The house had remained vacant for years before it was finally demolished to make way for the restaurant. As I read through old newspaper articles and crime reports, a chill ran down my spine. The details of the murder were gruesome, and the thought of such a tragedy occurring there made my stomach turn. The man had been arrested and convicted, but the memory of his actions lingered long after he was gone. The more I learned, the more it all made sense. The shadowy figures, the feeling of being watched, it was all connected to the horrific events that had taken place there. The spirits of the murdered family were still present, unable to find peace in the place where they had met such a violent end. Reflecting on this connection, I realized that my experience at the restaurant was more than just a series of strange sightings. It was a glimpse into a dark and tragic past, one that continued to haunt the present. The uneasy feeling I had felt was the lingering energy of the victims, trapped in the place of their suffering. I thought back to the moments I had felt watched, the cold chill that had run down my spine. It was as if the spirits were trying to communicate, to make their presence known. The restaurant, despite its lively atmosphere, was a place of deep sorrow and unrest. I couldn't shake the thought that I had been in the presence of something truly otherworldly. The idea that the spirits of the murdered family were still there, watching and waiting, filled me with a sense of dread. I felt a mix of sadness and fear, knowing that such a tragedy had left a permanent mark on the place. The discovery left me deeply unsettled. I had always been skeptical about the supernatural, but my experience at the restaurant had changed that. The connection between the hauntings and the tragic past was too strong to ignore. It made me realize that some places are forever marked by the events that occurred there. Even now, I can't drive past the restaurant without feeling a shiver of fear. The memory of the dark figures and the haunted realization stays with me, a constant reminder of the things that linger just beyond our understanding. The restaurant, once a place of enjoyment and relaxation, now seemed like a portal to a dark and tragic past. I have no intention of ever returning to that restaurant. The fear and unease are too strong to overcome. The spirits of the murdered family, their restless presence, had left an indelible mark on me. My curiosity had led me to a disturbing truth, one that I wished I could forget but knew I never would. As I try to move on, the experience remains a haunting reminder of the past's ability to reach into the present. The tragedy that occurred there continues to cast a long shadow, one that I am certain will linger for years to come. The investigation had given me answers, but it had also deepened my fear, leaving me with more questions than before. The experience at the restaurant left a lasting impact on me. Every time I thought about returning, a deep sense of fear and unease welled up inside me. The memories of the shadowy figures and the chilling history of the place haunted my thoughts. I knew I could never step foot in that restaurant again. I often found myself reflecting on the nature of the hauntings. The spirits of the murdered family seemed to linger, unable to find peace. It was as if their tragic end had bound them to that place, their presence a constant reminder of the horrors that had occurred there. The thought sent shivers down my spine. There were so many unanswered questions. Why did the spirits remain? What did they want? Were they trying to communicate something, or were they simply trapped in an endless loop of their final moments? The lack of answers only added to my fear. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. I shared my experience with a few close friends, but their reactions were mixed. Some were intrigued, while others were skeptical. But none of them had been there that night. None of them had felt the cold chill of being watched or seen the shadowy figures glide by. It was a feeling I wouldn't wish on anyone. The restaurant itself continued to thrive, oblivious to the dark history it was built upon. People enjoyed their meals and laughed with friends, unaware of the restless spirits that lingered just beyond their perception. It felt surreal, knowing what I knew and seeing others go about their lives as if nothing was amiss. As the weeks turned into months, the fear and unease never fully left me. The memory of that night stayed with me, a constant reminder of the unknown and the supernatural. I avoided the area around the restaurant, not wanting to be reminded of the dark events that had unfolded there. I often wondered about the spirits of the murdered family. Were they still there, watching silently as diners enjoyed their meals? Would they ever find peace, or were they doomed to haunt the place forever? The thought of their eternal unrest filled me with a profound sadness and fear. The experience had changed me. I found myself more attuned to the subtle, eerie sensations that I had previously dismissed. Shadows seemed darker, quiet moments heavier with unspoken presence. It was as if my encounter had opened a door to a world I had never believed in, a world that was now a part of my reality. I made a decision to avoid the restaurant and its surroundings entirely. The risk of encountering those restless spirits again was too great. My curiosity had led me to a disturbing truth, one that I could not unlearn. The sense of dread that came with that knowledge was something I would carry with me for a long time. Even now, the image of the dark figures and the feeling of being watched are vivid in my mind. They are more than just memories, they are part of my understanding of the world, a reminder that some places are forever haunted by their past. The restaurant, with its cheerful ambience and lively patrons, is a place of shadows for me. The lingering fear and unanswered questions have become a part of my daily life. I've come to accept that some experiences change you in ways you can't fully explain. The restaurant, the spirits, and the tragic history are all woven into the fabric of my thoughts, an unsettling presence that I cannot escape. In the end, I chose to move on, but the shadow of that night remains. The fear and unease are a constant reminder of the things we do not understand, the dark corners of our world that hold secrets we may never fully uncover. The restaurant may continue to operate, but for me, it will always be a place of haunting and mystery.